All right, I'd like to check our volume. If anyone is able to hear me, let me know. Just put your thumbs up. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Okay, tonight we're going to be talking about muscle system part 1. So what I'd like you to do is at least have the work sheet, and we're going to talk about that. And then last night I was able to screen share and go over the photos. So we're going to try and do that tonight so we can, get through the material and it'll be a little easier to understand. I was just putting in the quiz grades for last week, and I realized that we really only have, after tonight, we have one more meeting and then we have a test. And so we're more than, at that point, we'll be 2/3 through in another 2 weeks. So this semester is flying. Okay. So it's just now 7. So let's get started. The first thing it wants us to look at is what's called dense regular connective tissue. Dense regular connective tissue is what will make ligaments and tendons. And what makes it regular is that all the fibers will run in one direction. Okay. So when we look at it, ligaments are going to connect bone to bone, and dense regular connective tissue will be found in both ligaments and in tendons. Another tissue that you're supposed to know, and we'll look at later, is skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle has multinucleate, has many nuclei, but it has little ridges in it where you have light and dark areas. And this is where actin and myosin, where you have the thin filaments and the thick filaments. And so muscles only, basically, they slide together and contract, and then they release and they relax and lengthen. So muscles basically only shorten and lengthen. That's what they do. So when the other function of a muscle would be to move a bone. So the tendons are the part of the muscle at the ends of the belly that will attach to bones, and it will allow the bones to move, like when I move my shoulder. Okay, give you an idea of what's going on. The nerve that we want to talk about is called a motor nerve. Motor nerves will have an effect on a muscle, because motor refers to muscle, or a gland. So when you sweat, or if you're if you have sweat glands or oil glands, those are controlled by these motor neurons. And so we want to take a look at the axon. And the axon is the part of a nerve just past the nuclei or nucleus. And it actually is the part of the neuron that moves away from the nucleus towards the end of it, towards the axon terminal, or the end of the nerve. So the nerve will actually come up to where the muscle is, and that's called the terminal end plate, or axon terminal. So hopefully we get a chance to look at that. So the axon terminal would be a junction between the axon part of the nerve and the sarcolemma, which is the receptor layer of the muscle. And the skeletal muscle fibers that we will talk about are actin and myosin. Those are the striations that we're going to see in muscle. Now, muscle has many wrappings or layers. So if I look at a large muscle, let's say any of the muscles on this little chart, as an organ, the outer layer of that muscle would be called epi, and then the term myosin means muscle. So it's the outer layer of the organ, the entire organ, and that would be an epimyosin. But then there's groups of muscle parts called a fascicle, and a fascicle will have a perimyosin around it. And then the individual muscle fiber is much like this pencil. And if you look around it, if this were a muscle fiber, around the muscle fiber would be an endo. So these terms, endo, peri, and epi, all are referring to different tissue layers around the muscle. So when you tear a muscle, you're basically tearing where the actin and myosin is, or you could tear the tendon, or you could affect the nerve that's there. And so it takes basically one of the things about muscles tend to heal, but they'll heal with scars, so they're not as flexible. So if somebody tears a hamstring, it could take a long time for that to heal. So that's page 1 of your sheet. Are there any questions thus far? Does anybody have any question on dense regular connective tissue or skeletal muscle or neuromuscular junction? I like neuromuscular junctions. I'll explain why Trinity in a little bit. And then these 3 outer layers. So we're going to look at that when we look at some of the photos or the images. So what we want to do now is let's talk about the terms I just mentioned. So a motor neuron is a nerve that goes to a muscle, Brianna. And so that would be G. It'll carry the stimulation from basically the spinal cord or brain to a muscle or gland. And you might want to write gland in there too, because I don't want you to think that motor neurons only go to muscle. The next one is axon terminal. So it's the end of the neuron, and that would be H. And it has little tiny vesicles. They're like little receptors, not receptors, they're like little containers. Let's call them a container. And they're going to have a neurotransmitter. In this case, the neurotransmitter is called acetylcholine. And so in the axon terminal, you'll have acetylcholine released and on the sarcoplasmic reticulum, the sarcolemma, I'll have a receptor, and this chemical will sit on that receptor and allow for an action potential, is what will occur. So after acetylcholine, which was C, the neurotransmitter that stimulates the muscle fiber, then we have sarcolemma. That's the layer, the outer layer of the muscle itself, E, that contains the receptor for the acetylcholine. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the nerve to have an effect to cause an action potential on the muscle. And then once the muscle gets this action potential, it'll send a signal through what's called the transverse tubule. And transverse tubule, or D, carry the stimulation across the muscle fiber. After it does that, then there's an area of the muscle that will be called sarcoplasmic reticulum. And if you recall, when we looked at cells in lab 3, we had endoplasmic reticulum. Now we have sarcoplasmic reticulum. And so this is F, stores and regulates the calcium ion and allows the calcium to release. So the calcium ion is released by the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And then on the actin, you'll have what's called troponin, tropomyosin, which is A, that's the under actin. Troponin, tropomyosin has to open up, and it does that when calcium comes in, and it allows for the myosin, which is the thick fiber, B, or thick filament, and it allows it to move across itself. So in other words, it's called a sliding filament theory. So actin and myosin, so let's consider this side here the thick fiber, and this the thin. So when these are coming together, they'll slide through and form little bridges. And it's almost as if you have a ratchet, it'll move and it'll make it stronger. The more bridges you have, the more strength that you have that will occur. So on the bottom of page 2, we have placed the above structures in order. G is the motor nerve axon, goes to the axon terminal. H goes to C, the acetylcholine, which goes to E, which is the next one, sarcolemma, that will then use the T-tubule, and then the T-tubule will use the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which releases calcium, and then you're going to have the actin or thin filament, and then you're going to have the thick filament. So in order, it's G, H, C, E, D, and then F, A, and B. So in other words, that's how these are going to move. And if you don't have that down, I have 2 uploaded examples of this lab that are at the bottom of the lab. So I've already uploaded it, and if you look at those, that'll give you more information. But that gives us a little bit of information on how the signal from the nerve is going to get into the muscle. We will have some pictures that we can look at. All right, now we're going to get into the fun stuff. So we're on page 3. Page 3 are all these muscles. And so these muscles are named basically for their shape, or maybe they have 2 bellies, or maybe they look like a triangular, like the deltoid muscle, or maybe if they have 2 bellies, it could be, the example is digastric, or it could be a rhomboid shape. So the first one that you need to know is what's called orbicularis oculi. But before we go any further, I would like everybody to number all the actions from 1 through 7. So action number 1, elevates mandible, just make that 1. Raise angle of mouth, make that 2. Just write on down. Flexes head, 3. Elevates hyoid, 4. Closes, protrudes lips, 5. Extends head, 6. And 7, close eyes. Everybody got it? Because we're going to fill in this little sheet and we're going to give you the number and I'll talk about it. It's easy to write a number in. So what do we need to do then with origins and insertions? And I'll describe what they are. Well, they're going to be number 8 through number 19. So start on the right side, sternum 8, mandible 9, hyoid 10, right on down, maxilla 11, zygomatic would be 12, temporal bone is 13, clavicle 14, angle of jaw 15, right on down. Coronoid process of the mandible, remember, that would be 16. Mastoid process of the temple, that would be number 17. Spinous process vertebra is 18, and the occiput is 19. So all these terms, we learned them when we were dealing with the various bones. So let's take a look at orbicularis oculi. If I have a binocular, I have what? 2 lenses, correct? But when we're dealing with this, when you look at the eye, this is what allows you to do action number 7, which is to close your eye or wink. So it allows you to wink, blink, or close your eye. So it's the circular muscle around your eye. You don't need to know the origin or insertion for this. You notice there's lines through it. Now, what is the origin and what is the insertion? The origin is the part of the muscle that doesn't move as much as the insertion. So the origin would be the least movable and the insertion the most movable. Okay, normally that's how that works. So if you think of it that way, where something originates and then to where it attaches. So that's really what we have. So the first attachment is the origin, or where the muscle is coming from, and then where is it attaching to. Now, we don't want to make this hard, because if you know the way that the fibers are running, and all muscles do, I said, is do what? Shorten and lengthen. So in other words, if I can look and see that the muscles, let's say, are running from on the side of my head, let's say from the temporal down to the coronoid process of the mandible. And so if these two shorten, it allows me to close my jaw. So you don't have to get all excited and go, oh, I got to learn all these movements and actions, but I mean, it'll be right in front of you. So in other words, just know where the fibers are and then shorten the fibers, and that gives you what the action is. Does everybody kind of get that idea? All right. What I'd like everybody to do that's with us tonight is turn on your audio and video so I can see smiling faces. If I don't see smiling faces, then I don't know if you're here.
Hello.
Hello. Let me let a few others in. They want to come see us. They want to come play. Okay. So far we've talked about we talked about two muscles, circular muscles around the eye, circular muscles around the mouth. But we want to talk about a muscle that goes from the zygomatic process down to the angle of the mouth. And I told you that we learn the name of the bone, and that'll give us the name of the muscle. So the name of the muscle is zygomaticus, coming off the zygomatic process. So when it shortens, what does it do? It allows you to elevate your angle of your mouth and smile. So that's number two. But first we need to know the origin. The origin is the zygomatic process. That's number what? The zygomatic bone. That's 12. The insertion is 15. That's the angle of the mouth. And then the action is to smile. So the action is raise the maxilla up is what it's actually doing. Okay, it raises the angle of your mouth up and allows you to smile. Okay, so the next one are muscles that go to that bone that's hidden. Where's the bone that's hidden? It's in the name. What's the next muscle? Anybody? Lance? Octavia, what's the next muscle on our sheet? What is it called? Milo what? Catherine Potter, what is it? What does it say right there? Milo hyoid. Okay, what do we know about the hyoid bone? It's the only bone that doesn't do what?
Move.
Well, it doesn't articulate with any other what? Bone. So it's underneath, it looks like a horseshoe. It's underneath here. And these muscles, mylohyoid, are going to attach to it. And so it's under your mandible. So here's the trick. Because it's under my mandible, what's it going to do if I attach it to my mandible and my hyoid? It's going to shorten, and what happens to my mouth? I open my mouth, right? Everybody see? So a muscle that is below the mandible pulls the mandible down. The muscles above the mandible, starting in your, let's say, the temporal bone, or up here in the zygomatic process area, that go down, what are they going to do if they shorten? They'll close. So in other words, we're going to see that mylohyoid comes off 9, the mandible, and it inserts on the most movable. So the more movable part would be the hyoid. And so when we look at it, the origin is the mandible bone. The insertion is the hyoid bone. And what's the action? Number 4, it kind of elevates the hyoid a little bit, but what does it do into the mandible? It pulls my mandible, it opens my mandible, depresses my mandible. So when we look at it, the origin is 9, the insertion is 10, and the action is 4, depress. It opens your mouth, okay? And then digastric has 2 bellies. You need to know it does the same action as mylohyoid, and that is depress your jaw, okay? Depress the mandible. The next one is called temporalis. We've already talked a little bit about it. It is a muscle that fills the fossa of the temporal bone, and it goes to the, why did I make you learn coronoid process of the mandible, Justin? Because that's where this little booger attaches. So it's going to go from the temporal bone to the coronoid process of the mandible. And if my mouth is open and I shorten these 2 points, what did I just do? I did what? I elevated the mandible or closed my mouth. Does everybody kind of get that? So temporalis originates in 13, temporal bone. Then it inserts on 16, just write 16, coronoid process of the mandible. And then its action is to elevate the mandible, which is number 1. Does everybody like these using numbers? It makes it a little easier. Okay? All right. Masseter. The masseter muscle is the one on the side. It's the one that's right here on the side of the back portion of your mandible. So when you tighten your jaw, it's going to form this area here. So it's kind of like a rectangular muscle that'll attach to the zygomatic process and go down to the mandible. So it has the same function it has the same function as temporalis. But the masseter comes from the maxilla up above here in this area, and then connects to the mandible. And so if you want to crack nuts or use a jawbreaker, that's where you put it. So you have a lot of strength there. So masseter, the action is number 1. So origin 11, insertion number 9, action number 1. And it elevates my mandible. So what you're going to need to do is learn which muscle allows you to smile, zygomaticus, which one allows you to blink or wink, orbicularis what? Oculi, which allows you to kiss, orbicularis oris, which allows you to open your mouth or depress your jaw, mylohyoid or digastric, which allows you to close your mouth, temporalis and masseter. Okay, so you want to kind of, that's how you want to get them down. And then we have the 2 more at the bottom. One is called sternocleidomastoid. Take your pen and write down SCM, sternocleidomastoid. That'll give you the 3 points of connection. And so this muscle has originates on 2 parts, on the sternum and the clavicle. So if I'm here and I turn my head, I've got the sternum portion and the clavicle portion, and then you come up, and that's the origin. So when we look at it, it's number 8 and number 14 for the origin. So it's what? Sternum and clavicle as origin, and the mastoid process of the temporal bone, which is number 17, that's the insertion. And then, so what does it do if I'm contracting these? Flex my neck. So the action is number 3, okay? Number 3, flex neck. So when I go like this and I lean forward, that's flexion of my neck. So the muscle that connects between the front and the back to the temporal is going to allow me to flex. How am I going to extend my neck? So I have to have some muscles that are on the back of the what? Back of the neck. And so the muscle on the back of your neck is called splenius, and its origin is number 18. Your insertion is number 19. So just like Trinity was doing, Trinity was moving her head back. Take your fingers, put them on the lower part of your neck, and then maybe your other finger a little higher up. And as you move backward, these 2 points are doing what? They're coming closer together. So that's how you extend. Okay? So when I want to extend, I'm using splenius. When I want to flex, I'm using what? Sternocleidomastoid. Okay? So that'll get us through the first group. So now we have another group. The next group is page 4. So let's talk about the actions. Let's do what we did before. Let's label these actions from adducts depressus scapula as number 1 and number it from 1 to 8. So flexes torso, compress abdomen, that's number 8. So just number those 1 to 8. And then origins, insertions, we're going to start that as number 9, and we're going to go from number 9 down to number 16. So ribs is number 9, xiphoid process is 13, and when I get all the way to the bottom, I should be at number 16, transverse process of thoracic lumbar spine. Is everybody with me? Okay, so these muscles are going to be named serrated, means that it has a serrated edge just like a knife. So on the side of my body, I have these muscles that are serrated. They have like a little sharp edge, and it's going to run basically from here, and it's going to go back up into my scapula in the back. So serratus anterior, you just need to know, let me tell you a story so you'll remember it. This is the boxer muscle. So I live in West St. Pete, and there's a park that's like 2 miles around the park, and I used to run a lot. And so one night I was out running on the sidewalk, And some guy that was behind me on the street decided that he had to come up, run past me. The only thing was this guy had his arms up in the air and he was doing this like he was a boxer. Has anyone ever seen somebody run and box at the same time? It's like they're training, right? The only problem is I was in good shape, Lance, so I would go and pick up my pace. He's younger than me though, Corey, so he picked up his pace. And then Keisha, I picked up my pace. And what did he do, Jennifer? He picked up his pace. And next thing you know, we're like just running real fast around this thing. And so we get tired, and that's the first time I saw him. And then I didn't see him for a while. 8 years later, I'm running from from where I am right now, Pinellas Park, to St. Petersburg. And guess who do I see running up Park Boulevard with his arms in the air, trying to punch and stuff like that? He's doing serratus anterior motion, guys, okay? His arms are abducted up in the air, and he's like trying to punch. Has everybody got me? So you just need to know that from anatomical position, if I take my shoulder and I bring it to midline, that's ADD, adduction. But if I bring it away, that's ABD, I've abducted. Does everybody follow? So to do that, you got to use this muscle, serratus anterior. And if you have a serratus anterior, what does that tell me, Justin? If I have an anterior, I have to have a
posterior.
Posterior, exactly. And if I have a rhomboid major, what do I have to have then? I have to have a rhomboid, got to have a rhomboid minor. So in other words, we're going to find a gluteus medius, minimus, and maximus. But that's next week, okay? You don't have to find it tonight. You're sitting on it, by the way. Okay, pec minor is a little muscle that attaches at your scapula. And so the origin, basically, pec minor is going to be on your ribs. So when we look at it, it'll say the origin is number 9. The insertion, what's this bone here in the front? I forgot, Trinity. What was that bone? This was coronoid process of the mandible. What was this one here called? Nicole, what was this one here called? Dania, which one? What was Brianna? What was this one called down here? Part of the scapula. You change the N to a C, and this is what? Coracoid. So the coracoid process. So this muscle, much like serratus anterior, it allows me to abduct my shoulder. But take your hand. I want everybody to humor me. Just take your hand, put it on your, right here in the front, and elevate, kind of like elevate your ribs. You feel it pull up? So this pec minor muscle will elevate your ribs, but also abduct your shoulder. So it has action number 5 and number 7. Is everybody with me? It's small. It'll be underneath the pectoralis. Here's your big pec muscle. It's a little tiny muscle here. So the next one is the trap. Your trap muscle is on the back of your spine. The trap makes a big triangle, and it'll attach from the occiput all the way out to the acromion, and then it attaches all the way on all the spinous process down to the lower thoracic, but it makes a big triangle. It has fibers that run out to the shoulder, fibers that run out to the scapula, fibers that run up to the scapula. So when we start talking about the trapezius muscle, it's a huge, big muscle. It's very, very flat. You need to know that it does number 1. Its action is number 1. What's the action? It will adduct my what? It'll allow me to bring my shoulders back because it's on my back. And then it will allow me to pull my shoulders back, my scapula back. But what else could it do? If it attaches up here on the top, it allows me to elevate. But you just need to know that what it does is number 1. Is everybody with me? Mm-hmm. So when we look at it, all you need to know, the action for the trap is to adduct to press scapula. There's another muscle called the rhomboid. It's named for its shape. A rhomboid shape is a shape that basically is going to look like this. I'll just kind of draw it out. It'll have an angle coming down to the to the scapula, and then move on up. So it has a shape called rhomboid, and so the rhomboids do the action called number 6, and number 6 is adduct, ADDUCT, and elevate is what it does. Elevates the scapula. Okay. So we have the rhomboids that are in between the scapula. And so the fibers are going to run from, let's say, on an angle upward. So when the fibers shorten, it'll adduct and elevate the scapula. That's what it actually does. The next one is called lead. Go ahead, question.
I'm sorry, Professor. So for these two that we just did, we don't need the origin or anything like that, right?
Yeah, if there's a line through it, you don't have to know it.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Okay, the next one is called levator scapula. And I want you to find it by taking your fingers and putting it on the upper part of your scapula. On the medial border, there's a big knot. Corey, do this for me. I got mine here. I got a knot there. And so if I'm looking at this picture that I have, it would be off the angle, superior medial angle going up into the scapula, up into the neck from the scapula. So in other words, when I take my finger and I rub on that medial part, Corey, you feel the knot? You feel a big bump in there? Octavio, you feel it? I do. I got one. It's because my head is too big. I got a big head. I got a thin muscle, and I'm always leaning forward. So there's always pressure on it, and you get trigger points, and that's where some of the headaches come from. But let's make it easy. What is the action of levator scapula? Put E in front of levator, and then what does it do?
Elevator?
It's the elevator of the scapula. Yeah, it elevates the scapula. So let's talk about the origin. The origin is number 12, and then insertion is number 10 on the scapula, and the action is 3, elevates. Okay, that's the hard one. It's real small, and we should see it when we get to later on looking at some photos. All right, rectus abdominis. Does anybody have a rectus abdominis? Remember, it's on the front of the abdomen from the xiphoid process to the pubic symphysis. So rectus abdominis, origin 11. Insertion 13. So what was the origin? Number 11 is pubic symphysis, and it goes up to xiphoid process of the sternum. And action 8. What's the action for 8? Flexes the torso, compress abdomen. Is everybody with me? Okay. I have 2 muscles that are called oblique muscles, and they're on the side. Well, one is internal and one is external. You're not going to see the internal unless we're in lab, and you can take the whole front part out and look inside. But the muscle will run on an angle of like 45 degrees. So it's going to run on an angle like this. So when it contracts, it does 2 things. It allows me to flex my torso and rotate or twist. So the function or action of internal and external is number 4. It flexes and rotates your what? Your trunk, okay, or torso. And then the last one that we have to know is on the back of my spine. So it's going to start at origin is 16. The insertion is 15. And the action is 2. So these muscles connect right here in the lower part of the spine and run up the spine. And when they tighten, they'll do what? They hold me erect. So I do not know why it got its name, erector spinae. Can anybody tell me? Anybody want to tell me why it got its name, Corey, erector spinae? Because it helps hold you what?
It holds your spine erect.
That's exactly what it does. So all the stuff we talked about is so simple. It's just so easy. It's so easy. Okay. Of course, I've been doing this for a few years now. All right. You want to, let's go ahead and see if we can take a look at a few things. And what I would like to do right now is, let's take a little pause, okay? And let's see if I can screen share. I could do it last night, and if we can do it, it'll make things a lot easier. So I'm going to screen share, and we'll go and do that here. So let's see if we can get that done. Give it a moment, it takes time. It's like students trying to wake students up. When I got on today, it took me like 3 minutes just to get on the computer. Did anybody else take that much time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it took a long time. And so when I was doing this last night, it took a minute or two. So we'll just wait is what we'll do and see if we can. Something's happening, folks. Let's see if we get a picture. It's a little slow. There we have a picture. Okay. So what we have here, let me see if I can move it over. I need to be able to go ahead. So anyway, this is basically what you're looking at here. This is muscle is what we actually have. And so let me see if I can move us. I've got a picture of smiling faces like Justin and Jamie, and where they are, I need to be able to get to, let me see if I can move it down. Okay, we're able to move it anyway. All right, so as it turns out, that was skeletal muscle, and I can move it. So what we have here, see the little striations, guys? See these little lines in there? Those are the actin and myosin. So the reason you have these little, what look like little lines in there, are you have actin, which is thin filaments, and the myosin, which is the thick. And that's where we have that sliding filament theory. Also in here, we're gonna have multiple nuclei, and it's a voluntary muscle. So in other words, I can control this muscle. Can everybody see my arrow? All right,
No,
this,
Professor, I can't see. what
okay,
you're
well,
looking
anyway, you just need to be able to see. Can everybody see the photo?
Yeah.
at.
All right,
No,
good. You can't see this photo in the middle of the screen?
I see
No.
multiple photos, but
No, I
Yeah,
see
I
a bunch of thumbnails.
Yeah, I still see all of them.
You still see, is there anybody that actually sees what I am able to see, or not really? Is everybody seeing multiple?
Yeah,
All
I've
right,
seen
so-
multiple.
Okay, I don't know why, but last night we were able to get that where it didn't occur. All right, well, let me talk a little bit about it real quickly so you can get an understanding. And then what you will do tonight is the following. You're going to go to these various photos because I will describe them, and then you'll be able to go ahead and look at them, and it'll tell you what they are. Was there anybody that could actually see the muscle fiber, or is everybody just looking? Like I see it like 5 inches by 5 inches on my screen. Does anybody see that, or is everybody seeing thumbnail? Thumbnail? All right.
Thumbnail.
Okay.
Yeah,
So anyway, you'll want to look at the muscle slide so you can tell that it's a muscle slide. And so you may see this on the practical. There's a slide that'll show all the fibers running in one direction, and they're collagen fibers. Does anybody remember what I said about collagen? Collagen is for what in the skin? It's not elastin. What does it do? Elastin gives me elasticity. What does collagen do? Strength. So collagen is in tendons and in ligaments. And then there'll be what's called a neuromuscular junction, where the axon nerve terminal will be on top of the muscle fibers. And then you'll actually see a I'm going to say basically a model of the inside of the muscle. It'll show you the axon, and then it'll show you T-tubules. It'll show you a sarcolemma. It'll show you the sarcoplasmic reticulum. You'll be able to look at actin and myosin, and then it'll show you a picture of the various wrapping around the muscle, the endomysium and sarcolemma. Sarcolemma refers to the tissue of the muscle or muscle tissue. So you look at that. You'll have various slides on that. Then you'll be able to look at these muscles. You will see orbicularis oculi. Which one was that? The oculi. The one around the what? The eye. And then there's one around the mouth, orbicularis oris. And then there's the one that allowed you to flex. That was called sternocleidomastoid. And then you'll be able to see the muscle that's on the temporal and the masseter muscle, and the one that allows you to smile. And then you'll see the ones under the mandible, mylohyoid and digastric. And then you'll see the one on the side of your ribs called serratus anterior. That's the boxing muscle. And then you'll look at the rhomboid muscle, the splenius, and the levator. You'll be able to look at them. And then there's one with a trap and the latissimus. And then rectus abdominis. And then one will show you pec minor. And then that's it for this time. So I'm going to stop sharing here. Okay. What I want to do is, since you're going to be looking at these images in just a minute, you had a page 5 on tonight's assignment. Does everybody recall? Page 5 was kind of like a summary of everything. So anybody have the summary? Let's go over the summary so it'll make it easy for us. Okay, so on page 5 at the top, everybody with me? If I want to wink or blink or close my eye, I'm using one of the orbicularis. Orbicularis what? Oculi. If I'm kissing, which one do I use? Orbicularis oris. Oris. What if I smile? Zygomaticus. Zygomaticus. So that was Zygomaticus. What if I depress my mandible? What was under the mandible? Mylohyoid and digastric.
Okay.
Okay. Which ones allowed me to elevate my mouth? Temporalis on the side, the temporal, and the masseter, the real big, strong one by my jaw. Okay. In the middle of the page, I flexed my head with SCM, sternocleidomastoid. Just put the 3 letters, SCM, sternocleidomastoid. And how do I extend my head? Splenius, SPLENIUS. I extend with splenius. Okay. How do I bring my arms up? Serratus, anterior. And pec minor. PECT-MINOR, pec minor, the one in the front. So when this tightens, my arm comes up, just like serratus anterior. And my boxing buddy, I don't know where he's at. He's probably running somewhere. He runs at night. You see this guy running with his arms up in the air. Looks crazy. Probably in good shape after all that running. He's been running for the last 16 years, probably. Okay. How do I adduct my shoulder? Adduct. I bring my scapulas where? To midline. So I would do that with the rhomboid and the trapezius muscle. Rhomboid, RHOMBOID, or traps, TRAP, traps. Does anyone remember how I elevate my scapula? Get rid of the E, and I do what? Use what? Levator scapula. Okay. I also could use the rhomboid or the trap, the upper part of the trap. So levator scapula is one. rhomboid is another, and traps, T-R-A-P-S. How do I flex my torso? How do I bring my torso up? Rectus abdominis, remember? And if I'm twisting to the side, I'm doing an oblique. And if I extend backwards, which one would I be doing? Erector spinae. So erector spinae is at the bottom. That allows me to extend or stand up. And when I flex my torso, I'm either using rectus abdominis or the oblique muscle. Okay. All right. All of this stuff is online in the lab. So go look at the pictures that I was just talking about. Okay. Also, if you want to, I was able to screen share, and everybody last night could see the photos. They didn't see a thumbnail. They actually saw the photos as we ran through them. But you need to know from the sheet, you need to know the various terms, Jennifer. For instance, you need to know sarcolemma, sarcoplasm, sarcoplasmic reticulum. So when you look at the photos, look and see transverse tubule, the myofibrils, and you need to know what a sarcomere is. These are terms from there's only 2 pages. There's this page that has these terms, and then the rest of them are all muscles, and we've gone over them a couple times. So some of this stuff should be repetitive as you look at it. So what I want you to do now is go look at the images. I've opened up the quiz so you can take it like 10 times if you want to. So if you want to take it 10 times, the only problem is don't take it after, or expect it to count if you take it after next Tuesday, because I'm going to go ahead and upload so I mark or post your grades. Okay, is everybody with me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So this part that we have right now, I'll go and upload this tomorrow. But our discussion, I think, was a little bit more to the point than the class that we had last night. But if you're able to get in and go and look at the various slides, do it now. And then make sure you read over these lab notes. And then if you have any questions, give me a holler. Okay? So you've got some work. If you want to see what the photos look like, you have good pictures in Ammerman. So it'll show you all the muscles, or in, the Marie book. So you have a lot of study material right there that should help. And we are 2 weeks away from a test, is what we are, Corey. I know, shake that head. You can smile now. Okay. If there are no questions, I will see you guys next week. And we'll be doing the muscles of the upper extremity and lower extremity. So you really want to get these down so that you don't have to play with them later. You want to just and make sure you know the terms like temporalis and masseter, and digastric or mylohyoid and splenius and all these different ones, because next week we're going to have probably about another 20, and so you want to kind of be putting stuff together. I was thinking some of you have done well and have hundreds on all your quizzes, and then there are some others that are lagging behind. I may have a catch-up day, and I'll tell you when it'll be, but I'm thinking I'm going to make a 24-hour opportunity for anybody that didn't get some lab quizzes done or didn't like their score to do it in a 24-hour period. What that means is you get a chance to catch up, but I'm also encouraging you at that same time to do what? Study. Does everybody follow? And if you get a little higher grade, then, then I can go in and I'll take a look at it at that time and give credit. Okay? If no questions, I'll see you next week. If you have a question, hang out and just ask me as we get ready to go. So I'll see you next time. Okay?
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Ozzy Hush. Good gracious.
Professor, I did have a question about the test.
Okay.
I took the test I took yesterday. I didn't do good the first time. I took it again
Sure.
a second time and did better. Are they averaged out for the 2 times I took, or are you just taking the first grade?
No, I take the highest.
Okay, that didn't happen last night.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I don't post, like Jamie, I just went in, and so let me see. So I just went in on, you mind if I tell you what you have? I have you as having
Okay.
a 60 on it.
Yeah, that was my
Okay.
first attempt. That was horrible.
Did you take it again?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see it on the, I don't know why it didn't post.
Okay.
So what did you get the second time? Because I just looked at.
Let me
ahead.
pull it up. I don't.
Well, that's all right. I'll go ahead and put a question by it, but
Okay.
yeah, I didn't. Let me just put a little circle. But I just looked at them to just try and encourage everybody to keep up, because if we don't, you're going to fall behind.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
I didn't know how it works. That's why I wanted
No,
to
if
ask
you
you.
take it 5 times and you get 100, you get to 100.
I gotcha. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Hey,
Thank you.
Dominique. You take care,
Hey.
Jamie. Hi.
Bye.
Okay, so I had a couple questions on I feel like this is the toughest one yet, I believe.
It will be. Yeah.
I don't know if you got my email, but I'll just ask you now. Professor, I don't know how to study for this material, to be honest. I made the flashcards. I take them to work with me,
Okay.
but when I quiz myself, it's like
You need somebody to quiz you that's in the lab is what you need. Or you need like, you need somebody that can quiz you that's in the lab. Or did you ever go to any of those review sessions with the one fella that was doing the review session?
no, I had to work. I'm half of the time I'm studying at work.
Okay, all right. Let me see. 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, you want to go from that 80 up to the 90, don't you?
Yeah, I
Okay.
really do.
Okay, I understand that. Well, you're working hard. For these muscles, what you need to do is you need to make a card, like on one side, origin and insertion, and on the other, the action. So in other
Okay,
words, you can
so-
flip it over. So like in other
Okay.
words,
Hold on, because I would have the definition here,
right?
and then I would quiz myself and be like, this is the uterus, this is what it means.
Okay, so
And
you
I have like 50 of these so far.
okay, so what you, all right, now all that stuff from the first test won't be on the second.
Okay.
So we're not going to worry about the uterus and all that. We're going to worry about cartilage. You need to know the 3 different types of cartilage. You need to know the 2 different types of bone. You need to know, like on long bone, you need to know the epiphyseal plate. There's always the question on those 4 zones in the long bone. So what you want to do is, like for this material here today, you want to go ahead and get the name of the muscle and then what its action is. And then later on, as you go through, like each time, like let's say you want to know, what the, let's say, levator scapula does. Remember I says it elevates your scapula?
Mhm.
So it's on the back here. So you need to be able to, like on the test, it may have an arrow on that levator and it'll say identify. And then there'll be rhomboid, levator, splenius or whatever. Well, you need to know the difference that levator is thin and splenius is a little larger. So you got to kind of put the picture like the shape. Like the rhomboid shape is kind of like I can't make a rhomboid shape, but it's not square. You see, it's a rhomboid shape. It's actually a different, it's like you got a triangle, but it's not a triangle, it's a rhomboid shape. That's how it got its name.
Okay.
Yeah. So you got to kind of go and take it from being able to identify what it is from where its location is, and then, how it could bring the shoulders together, or how it can elevate the shoulder. Or like, remember I was talking about the guy that would box and when he was running and stuff?
Boxer, yeah.
Yeah, he was running, I'm on the inside on the sidewalk, he's on the street. And he's got his arms in the air and he's like, he and I are like running, trying to beat each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was serratus. And then you got to know that this little muscle here in the front, pec minor, pulls it basically pulls your shoulder out like that. But if you're breathing, it'll elevate your ribs. So, you know, that's kind of like the stuff you want to have a little bit of information on. You see what I mean? But each time you go through, you learn more. You got me on that?
Yes.
Also, go in to the, if you're able to at work, and check out the YouTube video from last night, because I could go through and name, and I actually had where you could see the arrow and it showed the sarcolemma and the motor neuron. You could see that. So tonight, go ahead and look at it, but then go and check out the YouTube video that's under content. It'd be in the second little folder under content where it says YouTube videos. Okay. And that'll help too. But I want to encourage you to keep working. You're doing great.
Thank you. I had missed one of the lines of the temporalis. I didn't catch what you said for the
temporalis goes from the temporal bone. It originates there, and it goes to the coronoid process of the mandible, is what it does, and it allows you to
open your mouth.
No, you open down below. Put your hand on your jaw. That has to tighten below. What closes it? It has to go from here to here.
Okay.
So it crosses the joint. So this point and this point get closer together, and it closes. So the numbers, see, so that's how it works. So the muscle has to cross the joint to make the joint move. Okay, so here's my bicep is here going down below. So it allows me to flex my forearm. And it allows me to supinate and flex because it crosses that joint. So it has to cross the joint. That's how it moves bones. But let me give you the numbers for that. I just put it away. So temporalis, we find it.
One of them should be 17, right?
Let me see.
Okay.
Temporalis, origin is 13, insertion is 16, and action is 1. So look at me here. Dominique. Coronoid process. Yes. Temporal bone. So it's going from the whole side of the skull all the way to here. So where it originates is the least movable, and the insertion is the most movable. So when you think of a muscle, the least movable is the origin. Okay, so that's 13. The temporal bone's 13, and then 16 is the coronoid process. So when they go together, I elevate, I close my mouth, okay? I elevate the mandible is what I actually do, close my mouth.
Okay.
So if you think about it, if something is underneath and it pulls down, and remember, a muscle only does what? It just gets longer
and expand, and like you said.
So it's like a rubber band. It's either gonna get shorter or longer. And when it gets shorter, that's its action. So if this muscle here, let's say on the side of my face, this muscle is going to run from the maxilla here to the mandible, and it gets shorter. What happened to my mouth? I elevated my mandible. I closed my mouth. Do you see? So it's like, you know, so when you start looking at, oh, wow, hey, that makes sense now. See what I'm saying? So it's like it tells you what it actually does. So it's not all memorization. It's like, yeah, it runs across the joint. The joint is a hinge joint, and I closed it. Okay?
Okay.
You see, I miss lab. I miss being in lab because we could talk about this stuff. I mean, I put in for, I know. I put in for doing the lab in face, in lab. I don't know if I get it. We'll see. So this is hard on everybody. Yeah, for 2. Yeah, for 2. Yeah.
Do you teach AMP too?
Only the labs. but
Okay.
not, yeah, I may get one. Right now, I only have 2 AMP1s.
Okay.
So
All right.
it's as frustrating for me as it is you, because last night I didn't do anything differently than I did last night. I uploaded my photos, I had them open, I screen shared, I hit, and I could see my photos, and so were my students. They go, "Oh, I can see it, Dr. Byrne." And yet tonight, we've been like, we struck out every time I tried to screen share. I mean, all you see are little,
Pictures.
yeah, you see like thumbnails. Okay. Keep working.
All right. Thank
Oh,
you.
hey, you have a good night. Take care. Bye-bye.